Hello, and welcome to the Book Tribe podcast, where we interview authors and people who help authors about what works when it comes to the writing process, engaging with readers, marketing their work, and building a business. And today, I'm so pleased to be joined by Jenn of Mixtus Media, a book marketing and social media specialist who is helping authors to simplify the process and help them find out what will work best for them to connect with their readers and successfully market and sell their books. Welcome, Jenn.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here.
It's wonderful to have you, and I'm really excited because in my day job, I am actually I run a marketing agency of my own, so it's great to talk marketer to marketer.
Yes.
But to begin with, we're going to ask some very silly, quick-fire, bookish questions. Is that all right?
Love it.
So we're just going to get to know you a little bit.
All right.
There are no wrong answers, but let's get into it. So, when you read, do you have a comfort drink of choice, and what is it?
It depends on the time of day. So if it is during the day, it's tea, hot tea, usually an herbal tea. But if it's in the evening, I will do some sort of spirited beverage.
Nice.
I usually right now it's just a little bit of vodka with like a LaCroix and a splash of lime or something like that.
I'm a tea all day, every day.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what time of day. I need to be warm.
Yes.
Very British answer.
Yes.
So if books could talk, what genre would have the most gossip? Or the most interesting?
I think anything within the romance genre, like no matter what the subgenre is or like whatever collaboration of romance, fantasy, romance, comedy, there's always going to be some good gossip in there.
Absolutely. And I think if we went down the subgenre of romance, it would probably be dark romance because
that's twisted. Yeah. That's some interesting conversations for sure.
Oh yeah. And what fictional world would you most like to live in, and why?
Ooh, I'm late to the game with the Sarah J. Maas books, but anything where I can fly, any place where I can fly, like with the Fae and, like the wings. So I think any world where flying could be an option.
What a good answer. I like that. That's more on like an emotional feeling as opposed to I want to go.
Books are emotional. That's something. Yeah, that is it is a very emotional thing.
100%. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful answers there.
Right.
So let's just get into the questions. But firstly, let's just kind of set the scene a little bit with how you ended up where you are today in terms of, book marketing.
I always tell people that I really stumbled into it in a way that I'm welcome this stumbling, it's just been, and I think that anyone who, has ambitions early on in life, and as you move, through those ambitions, it always changes and it always shifts, and it turns out in different ways than what you originally intended them to be. Because I originally I got my start working in the music industry. I was a publicist, and it was in 2000 when I started my first job. And that was before social media had even come about. And it was really an interesting time in the world because that was really when digital started coming into play. Like the iPod descended, digital music came. And it was a chaotic time because it was like overnight, an industry was just kind of turned up on its head. And it was also a great time of innovation and creativity because we really had to figure out, okay, how can we work in this new landscape? And within all of that change, as I was I consider it a traditional publicity, meaning we got TV, radio, print media, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And virtually overnight, magazines started going away, newspapers started going away. And so we were kind of stuck. And I specifically remember sitting in a parking lot. It was right after my son was born. And it was a first meeting with a client. And I remember sitting there thinking, I can't lean into like, and just constantly complain about what isn't working, because that's all that people were talking about. Like, well, we can't get TV interviews. We can't do this. So I thought I need to focus on what is working. And what was working was everything digital. This was early on with blogs, early on with, like online, like digital magazines and stuff like that. And it was the early days of social media. And so it was really then that I decided, okay, I'm going to focus on everything digital. And I thought, if social media can connect musicians that I was working with at the time directly with their fans, then we can work with that. And so I really started to develop this new plan and approach, and people thought that I was nuts. They just thought that I was crazy. And it was a time where I was really finding my footing, but I was getting a lot of results for my clients. And in Nashville, like, I had so many, like independent musician friends, and a lot of people that realized, okay, we can do this without a label. And so I also met many authors, and they said, hey, do you think you could do for us what you're doing for musicians? I didn't know if I could, but I said, sure, why not? And so I figured it out. And so I've always been an avid reader. I love books, obviously, by my my bookshelves. Yes. But it was always kind of a dream to work with authors. And once I started working with authors, I saw, especially back then, because I've been working with authors for 15 years. And back then, like, there really were not a lot of resources for authors to learn, okay, how do you market a book? What is marketing? How do I connect with readers? Because musicians, they just kind of know, okay, I have to go out and perform to let my, people know about my music. Our sweet little authors want to, like, just sit in their at their desks and write. That's all they want to do. And I don't blame them. That's fantastic. But they also need, like, for them to let people know about their books, they have to talk about it. And so it was really kind of a mindset shift in, like, okay, how can I show authors how to best do this? And how can I empower them and encourage them to do this? And so that's really, it was, again, kind of a stumbling, like figuring my way out, how to do this. And so that's really, and it's crazy to think that was 15 years ago, but yeah, it's been 15 years since I started working with authors. And then I've been working in marketing it'll be 24 years, which is nuts.
Wow. Yeah, no, that you don't look old enough.
Bless you.
But I'd love to know, what do you find so exciting about kind of promote, like, the book marketing and promotion of books and helping authors? What is it that excites you?
I am a big believer that the more amazing books that we can have in the world, the better. And I'm a firm believer in people, when you feel that need or that uncontrollable desire to write a book and to share it with the world, I need to help, like, whatever I can do to help authors get it out into the world, the better. And I know many people look at marketing, they kind of look at it as like a 4-letter word. Like, it's just this, I've never met an author or a musician or any creative person who has said, I can't wait to market this. Like, it's not something that they look forward to. But how I look at marketing, and the way that I feel that marketing has evolved over the years, is that it's connecting. It's not selling yet. Marketing and sales are connected, but they're not necessarily the same thing. And many times I find that authors think that sales and marketing are the same thing, but they're two completely different things. And so marketing is all about connecting with your audience, with your ideal readers.
Hmm.
You're not trying to connect with the world. You're just trying to connect with the right people. And it's all about getting eyeballs on you and your book and your message and making that connection. And I think that something that so much of marketing is missing is empathy. People want to feel seen. And I feel like authors are some of the best people to let readers know that they aren't alone within what they're looking to escape to, what they're looking to feel, or if you write nonfiction, what answers they can help, like with what problems they can solve and, questions they can answer. And so I feel like marketing is really an amazing thing that connects a human with another human. And it's not about how much I can make or how much I can sell. If that's a goal that you have, that's fantastic. But it is about that connection. We want to feel seen. And I feel like marketing helps authors do that within their books and within what they're writing about.
Yeah, because I think with the term marketing, as you say, it's such a businessy word as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think I haven't got the budget, I haven't got the audience to do this, but I think,
Mm-hmm.
as you say, the 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 key to it all is really understanding. It's not trying to get the whole world to read your book. It's trying to
Mm-hmm.
find out who your audience is and where they live, where they go,
Yeah.
where do they engage with people, and that's really something that that's marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, no, that's great. And in terms of what makes an author successful, I don't know what successful
Mm-hmm.
means, but what are successful authors doing right?
So I always tell, because success is different for every single author. I worked with one author who said, if I could sell 1,000 books, that would be my absolute dream come true. Whereas for some other authors, that's just a drop in the bucket. And
Mhm.
so I think when a successful or when an author accomplishes success, they are making clear goals and reaching them. And even though that is different for each and every author, it does take intention. And that is something that when I see a successful marketing campaign or I see a successful or an author who is succeeding within their goals, they aren't just throwing things on the wall to see what sticks.
Mhm.
They have clear goals and they have a clear strategy on how to actually get there. It doesn't mean that they have a huge marketing budget. 9 times out of 10, they have zero marketing budget. And so that just means that you have to invest a little more time of your time into, whether that's, uh, building an audience on social media, whether that's doing podcast interviews, whether that's, doing ads or whatever it is. It's really about deciding this is how I want to connect with people and this is where I want to lead them and how I want to lead them. It's not guessing, it's not throwing something together. It's having a strategy and a plan in place ahead of time and working towards that.
Honestly, my little marketing heart is just absolutely loving you. Everything you're saying, because it's the same in business.
Mhm.
Throw stuff at a wall and hope it sticks. As you say, it is. You have to be so targeted with your approach, because
Yes.
otherwise you are wasting time and you are wasting money.
But and that's the thing, like that so many creative people, the word business is like an icky, like they're creatives, but I'm sorry to break it to you, you are a business. You are a business. Even if you have a publishing company, if like are self-published, whatever it is, you are a business. And successful businesses, just like you said, they are very intentional with everything that they do. And I think once that kind of clicks in an author's mind and they realize, okay, even though I'm running this business, it can be as corporate or as like whatever it is as we want, but it does have to be a business.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And let's kind of look at the challenges for authors, particularly those who are perhaps, starting out their career or are self-published or, are indie authors. What do you think those key challenges are going to be for them from this point forward?
So I think that there are a couple of different challenges. The first one is that I think that so many authors have is just their mindset of them thinking, oh, I'm terrible at marketing, or oh, I'm terrible at, I don't know how to do this. And it's more of a I read a quote the other day. It says it's greenest where I'm going to totally butcher it, but it's essentially it's green where you water it, meaning whatever you lean into, that's what's going to flourish. So if you're going to lean into the mentality of, oh, I'm awful at marketing or I'm awful at this, that's going to take root. And so it first starts off with a mindset of going, okay, if I don't know how to do this, I'm going to learn how, or I am going to, just take these little tiny steps. I'm not expected to be a marketing professional, right? Like when I decide to write a book,
Yep.
Your first book is going to be the biggest learning experience of your writing life. You're going to learn so much. But I think the first thing is absolutely the mindset, and having, even just working towards thinking like, I can do this. I am fully capable of doing this. This story is in me for a reason, and sharing that. And so that's the first thing. The second thing isn't necessarily, yes, the technicalities of, marketing, whether that be social media or newsletter or, all of that things, those things can be learned. Those, like you just go on YouTube and how to do a TikTok.
Yeah.
You can very easily find out the technicalities of how to do a TikTok. That isn't what's going to get you results. What you need is, okay, how do I want to connect with readers? How do I want to communicate? What is my hook? What is it about my book that's different from others? So it's not so much, yes, the technicalities do play a part of it, but those can be learned very easily. The struggle, I think, that most authors have, and I think that many authors think that the technicalities are the struggle, are that hump in the road that they have to get over.
Yeah.
But it's actually when you can just sit down and figure out, what is it about my book that stands out from others? Why should someone read my book? What is that hook? What are the emotions? What are the feelings that I want that readers are going to get when they read my book? Learning how to connect with their readers is really it's the cornerstone of your marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
once you have that, the trends, the things that change on social media, those, like you can adapt to that. Once you have that messaging, you're good. Like you can take that and apply it to anything that, it comes your way. As long as you have that messaging and your that strategy, that's the strongest part of your marketing.
Yeah, it's really coming through really strong, like that word strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't just run into it and go, oh my God, what reels am I going to do this week? And
Exactly.
what am I going to do? And then you end up spending your whole weekend doing all of these posts that don't really do anything.
Yes.
But actually thinking about it beforehand and thinking about those things that we mentioned earlier, who are your audience, where, what makes you stand out, that kind of thing is something that I think, that deep thinking kind of strategizing isn't something that comes naturally to a lot of people, but it's worth it.
It is. And it's also realizing that like just posting, actually, I should take that back. It's not just about the views and the likes and the comments that sells a book. Like I saw there were several authors that were talking about how their views had just gone down the toilet, like on TikTok or with their reels and stuff like that. And I kind of held back because it was a much deeper conversation, because it's views don't sell books. It's, you have to be lead, you have to get their attention, you have to nurture that audience, and then you sell to them. It's a process that you have to take them through. One, like the number of views isn't going to be the thing that skyrockets your sales. You have to lead them. You have to have, again, intention about where you're going to lead them. And so it's something where I think that a lot, the views and stuff like that, those are vanity metrics, and I've known so many authors who have a small audience, or what would be considered a small audience, or they don't get, millions of views on their videos, but they sell books because they have a plan and a process. And so I think that when we get stuck on the views, or when we get stuck on the likes and all of that stuff, I would very gently challenge them, saying, okay, like, are these views for you, or are they, actually helping you sell books? And so it's just kind of one of those, it's a tough conversation to have sometimes.
Yeah, no, I get that, and from my own experience, we've always said content is king. It doesn't necessarily matter about how many posts you do in a week. It's about the value that you're bringing to your audience in that single post. It could be that one post, as you say, sells more books than posting, several things
Yes.
or in a day. But some people post crazy amounts, and I'm like, oh, I couldn't manage.
Gosh, I know.
It's just such an emotional burden for authors as well to have that, that added task of about things like social media or.
Yeah. Well, and, it's a personal thing. It's hard not to take it personally. And I think any creative, whether you're a musician, a writer, a photographer, like whatever it is, when you create something, you're being very vulnerable. And when someone, gives a bad review, or they, slam you on social media or something like that, of course you take that personally. And so I think, like when you can get views, and when you can get, like a lot of attention, of course that makes you feel good. And I don't want to diminish that, like, of course we want to feel good, of course, but when we hinge everything on those likes, or on that approval, quote unquote, you're going to have days where you're not going to get as many views. You're going to have days where, and so you have to kind of look at the overall picture, especially as a creative person, and realize, okay, I'm not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. I'm going to get some great reviews. I'm going to get some bad reviews, but that does not diminish my value as a person. That does not diminish the value of my book. That does not diminish that one bad review is not going to diminish the 10 glowing reviews that I've gotten. So it's all about, you have to really, like, get into a good headspace. And, kind of, again, it's that mental, that mental mindset of, of being kind of like in a good spot, and learning how, and it's a process for sure. I don't think any author comes right on in and is just in a good spot, like mentally with that, because it does take some growing and learning and stretching and all of the things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. So in terms of social media specifically, what I think was at one point a really great marketing tool has kind of become this sea of content. What do you think authors can do practically to stand out from the crowd, or try and figure out what is my unique selling point?
So I'm a big believer in identifying who your ideal reader is. And that ideal reader, it's not about who is going to be seeing your posts. It's about who you are talking to as an author. So it's how I am going to be talking to you. Like if you are my ideal reader, I would know, okay, she loves marketing, she loves business, she lives in England. Like I know all of these details about you. And so I would know what kind of conversations we could have. I would know, okay, like I'm going to post some pictures of cats because I know that she loves cats, and those kind of things. So these ways to connect with a specific person. But if you and I were sitting on a stage with 10,000 people in front of us, it would be very difficult to figure out, okay, how can I connect specifically with them? What can I talk about? And so, what having an ideal reader helps us do is to focus on who it is that we're talking to and creating content that way. Because when I always tell authors, when you're trying to market your book to everyone, you're marketing it to no one. That's when we get into that very general topic, yelling into the void, where we're just kind of contributing to the noise. But when we can create a post that speaks to a specific point of interest or a specific problem or a specific emotion, specifics pierce through that, like that dark cloud of general content. And that is what makes you seen. And again, it's not about, you don't have to be seen by millions of people in order to make an impact. And again, I think that when we focus on our ideal reader and what that messaging is, what it is that they want to feel, what they want to experience, what it is that they're interested in, and even like focusing on the visual aspect of it. Are they looking, like if you're writing a mysterious, a dark fantasy, they're going to want darker, more brooding images or videos. If they want a rom-com, they want happy, bright colors, and smiles. And so it's thinking about these, like what it is, the visual, and then the content, which is in your messaging and what your ideal reader responds to. That is how we really stand out and how we break through that yelling, into the void of social media. So when we get into the specifics, that is how we can stand out.
So if we look at book marketing in a broader context, so not just social media specifically, it's an easy one to talk about, but more broadly book marketing, what would you kind of say are the fundamental things that authors need to be doing in order to reach new audiences and engage with readers?
So the very first thing, it all begins on what are your goals? Like, what is it that you want to accomplish? And who that ideal reader is. Because when you have those two elements, that can show you where you need to be. So, for example, I had a consulting call with an author. He writes historical fiction, and he's an older gentleman. And he was like, I'm willing to be on social media, but I don't want to be. And, I don't want that. I don't want to compete to have my voice heard. I was like, that's totally fine. And it's like, okay, so we talked about his ideal reader and we talked about what it is that he wants to talk about. And so we really determined podcasts are going to be a great opportunity for him to reach a wider audience. That's the first thing. We looked at his local surroundings. He lives in an area where he has access to several metropolitan areas where he could go to historical societies and he can talk to other, like interest groups and book clubs and other things like that. He was going to look around at different book clubs that were in the area. And it's really about seeing what it is that kind of lights you up. Like I've had some authors who they didn't necessarily want to be on podcasts, but they love writing and they want to contribute to like different magazines, different blogs, different online publications. And so they pitch, like pieces there. It's looking at what you have locally. When I was in the music industry, I used to do, it was called tour press, and where a band would go on tour, and we would go to the different cities, and then I would draw like an hour radius around the city. And I would look at all of the different local newspapers, the different stores, the different, ways that we could connect the band, you know, to get more word out about their show. And the same goes for authors. If you were to even just look around where you live and think about the different bookstores, the libraries, the different meetups. If you go to like meetup.com, you can look at, you know, like what are book clubs in the area or what writers groups or things like that. There are a lot of different things that you can do locally that can help you to not only connect with readers, but to network and meet other authors and to, you know, just make these connections. And so if that's something, if social media completely turns you off, that's fine. You know, there are other areas that you can, or different ways that you can actually promote yourself and to get the word out. And, you know, like if you have an ad budget, you know, doing like some Facebook ads, I wouldn't suggest, honestly, I kind of take that back. I'm not a big proponent of doing ads, especially for your first book, because you need to know what it is that resonates with people. You need to have the right copy. You need to have the right information in order to put that into your ad. So that's something that I would wait, you know, like once you have some good data and some good information and feedback, that would be a good option. But there's so many ways that you can work with what you have and what you're comfortable with to help promote your book.
Yeah, and I really enjoy this idea of, you know, going to audiences that perhaps aren't, you know, book clubs, but actually have an interest in that area. I think that's really, really clever. Is there anything that is like, well, firstly, I have two questions. Firstly, is it necessary for an author to build their own website? Is that important for them to do that?
So here's my answer, like within that. I am a believer that an author, it doesn't need to be a full-blown website, but there does need to be a destination that people can easily go to. Because when we talk about SEO, the search engine optimization, we want to have a centralized place where people can go to not only find new information, but where, like if someone Googles, you know, certain keywords like that our book contains, we want them to come to our website to find out more about us, more about a blog that we write or about our books or, you know, like other things that we have. I do think that having a destination where you can drive people to is very important. Does every author have one? No. But I think that, you know, like we want to make things as easy and straightforward and streamlined as possible for our readers to find us. When we're scattered all over the place and when there's little bits of information here and there, it's hard for readers to know where to go. And when there's confusion, there's loss of sales. So I do believe that having a centralized place like a website where you can direct people to go to where they can find interviews, where they can find your sales page, where they can find your social media, all of that stuff, it eliminates that confusion and they can find you all in one spot.
Yeah, like a landing page where, you know, everything is in one place. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a question, isn't it? Because, you know, they're like, I don't even know where to start when building a website. But if it's such a necessary thing to help your audience navigate towards your product and further actually purchasing it, then it's well worth it, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And there are ways around it too, where because another thing that I'm a big proponent of is a newsletter, having a newsletter and having a place where you can collect that information. If you were to sign up for a service like mailerlite.com, you get a free landing page with that subscription and it's free for the first like 1,000 subscribers. So you can start to build just like that landing page, start gathering email addresses for next to nothing. And it's all right there. So
oh, that's really useful. I've not heard of that at all before. So that's probably something that people should take a look at if they want to build their own sort of landing page and a newsletter, definitely.
Absolutely.
And the other question that I had was, is there something that's really creative that you've seen an author do to like promote their book that you thought was like really cool and worked really well?
So It's not sexy, but it works. It's time. So every author that I have seen in the past few years that has done a spectacular job marketing their book takes time, like it gives themselves time to make those connections. So, for example, there's a new author. Her name is Paula Lafferty, I think is her last name. And for a full year, she has been talking to her audience as she has written her book. And it has been, she's just done and it hasn't been anything fancy. It hasn't been anything, she's not doing crazy things. She's just posting regularly. And it might have been like 3 days a week, or maybe it was every day. I don't know. But I mean, she grew her audience. Mm-hmm. And just this past week, she launched a Kickstarter to fund her book. And within I think it was an hour and a half, it was completely funded. And now she's already has like over $36,000 pledged for her Kickstarter.
My goodness.
And there's still 17 days left. So, I mean, time, when you can be again, it's with the intentional and have the strategy, giving yourself time to build your audience and to make that connection with people. And when you nurture that, when it comes time to actually release your book, that is when you unleash the hounds and they come running. And so that is the best thing that you can do.
So for an author who is perhaps on the cusp of writing their first or next book, let's say, mm-hmm. let's say the very beginning of that process, what would you recommend their first steps be? Because obviously we've spoken about the ideal reader and we've spoken about the intention and we've spoken mm-hmm. about X, Y, and Z. But what are those like first couple of steps that they need to consider at the very beginning of this process?
So what I always recommend for authors is that, like, especially if let's say you're at the beginning of your writing, you don't quite have the storyline nailed down yet. Like it's still kind of being worked out. What I would always recommend is kind of approaching your social media as like a bookstagrammer or a book talker, talking about books that you're reading, and connecting with readers as a fellow reader. Because when we come right out of the gate talking about, our book, it's a bit of a turnoff. It's like, oh, they're just looking to sell, their book. So when you can connect with readers as a fellow reader and as someone who loves books or who loves, like I've had some authors who have like really, like funny hobbies or like pastimes, or like they do other interesting things. They kind of weave those in there because they let people know who they are as a person. Mm-hmm. And like, maybe you want to do some book reviews, maybe you want to, but it's really about just starting to share with readers who you are as a person, what you like, and connecting with them that way. Because if anyone has ever been sitting like in a coffee shop and they walk in and they see someone reading one of their favorite books, you almost fall in love with them because you're like, oh, they're going to get to this part and they're just going to it's just going to break their heart. Or, like you just kind of can't, you feel like you would be best friends with them. And it's the same way when you can connect with people, like as a fellow reader right off the bat. That's more of an opening to kind of start to talk about, like, what, I'm starting to write this book. And, like, you can just kind of let them in on the process. Mm-hmm. And when readers feel like they've almost discovered a new author, like you can't wait to tell your friends about, your other fellow readers about them. So that is what I would do, especially in the beginning, as you're getting your feet wet, as you're starting to grow your audience. That's one of the best ways to do it.
And it's almost that authenticity piece, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's not just, oh, this is, especially a new account on in these groups as well. It's not just someone who is potentially writing a book and I don't know if they're any good and I don't know if they are. It's just like one of those spam accounts almost.
Yes, exactly.
It's building that trust with readers, isn't it? Is that authenticity, the trustworthiness, the rapport, if you like. So
exactly. And it's really about, not being pushy or not being, it's really about just kind of gracefully entering to the conversation and entering into, like other people, like if you discover another account that shares the same, like love of, like a certain genre or of a certain author or something like that,
Mhm.
where you can just start conversations with these people. It's a really great way to genuinely connect with people.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to ask a question that's a bit more forward thinking.
Okay.
Um, we, we've spoken a lot about how it works today, but where do you see book marketing going? Do you think it's going to stay the same way, with how it currently works, or do you see some new, I don't know, methods being involved?
I personally see, I was just having a conversation with a fellow book publisher about this just a couple days ago, about how we see really the publishing landscape changing dramatically,
Mm,
because traditional publishing is really a big fat mess. Like, it's crazy that, honestly, like that it's working the way that it is, when it feels like it's just kind of fumbling along, and they kind of lean into the way things have always been done rather than looking forward
mm,
and, being more forward thinking. I do see more and more people leaning more towards the self-publishing route, and they don't want to either wait 2 years for their book to come out, because sometimes, I mean, that's really what happens.
mm,
They don't want to wait. They want more control over the look of the book, the cover, the marketing, all of that, and they want to make more money from their sales. And especially, like, even if you're in a traditional publishing house, the majority of the marketing lands on your shoulders. And so it's like, okay, then why is this huge chunk of, the sales going to the publisher, and I'm just getting the scraps, when I'm doing most of the work? And so that has been a big conversation for many authors for many years. And I do see that changing. Like, that's really where a lot, like, I think you're going to see the self-publishing side of publishing grow. Now, with that being said, how does that affect marketing, and how, like, where do we see that going? I definitely see, like, social media being still a part of it, but I see it as being kind of linked with something else that they can do to help promote their book, whether that be, like, um, podcast interviews, if that's, like having your own podcast,
mm.
that can be YouTube, like leaning into that, doing more video, and seeing how you can kind of lean into it more as a product, like beyond the book. I see, like authors, like, when you do self-publishing, you have just this endless opportunities, like, and I see, like, even with Paula's Kickstarter campaign, like, okay, are they going to lean more into Kickstarter? Are they going to look into Patreon, or, like, these other, like, services that can help creatives make a living or make extra money from their book and their writing? I think that it's exciting. Like, I love these, because I feel like it's very much like what it was, 20 years ago, where we were kind of at this, it's kind of like you're at the edge and you're looking down into this huge abyss. It's like, okay, what are we going to do to, keep moving forward? And so it feels scary but exciting at the same time. It's kind of like, okay, we can try something, and it could fail, and that's okay. But, like, I think that this is a time of really great innovation, of creativity, of, trying new things, because that's something, like, within traditional publishing, they want a sure thing. They aren't taking risks. and they aren't being that leader within plowing forward and trying, new things. So I see self-publishing and, just these new innovative ways to get books out there is going to not only help market your book, but also help open new opportunities for authors.
Absolutely. I definitely think I'm in the same headspace. It's like we're on this precipice, as you say, of just about to fall over into this new wave of innovation in the book industry because it needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
Reading habits have changed, the market's changed. So, there is some catching up to do and also some innovation that needs happening. If you had one piece of advice that you could give to authors, what would you tell them? What would be your one piece of advice for them to take away from today's session?
Take the time to strategize. Take the time to make a plan. And I know so many authors that I work with, they just want to do it, and they plow ahead. And I love that passion. I love their chutzpah and, like going for it. That's fantastic. But there are times when we need to just kind of like pull the reins in and think, okay, what do I want to accomplish? What do I want? Who do I want to talk to? Where do I want to go? And it's not something that's going to take a ton of time. It's going to actually save you a lot of time. It might stretch your brain muscles a little bit, trying to think through things, but it is something that is it's giving you a foundation to stand on and to not just kind of not wander around and just throw, spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Because that is going to drive you crazy and it's going to be so much less effective. And you're going to want to pull your hair out. So it's just save your hair, make a plan.
Save your hair, make a plan. I think that's the title for the podcast. So, Jenn, for anyone who wants to learn more about you and to get in touch with you, where can they go to do that?
They can go to mixtusmedia.com. And if they want to get started with the plan, I actually have a free book marketing blueprint that they can download. And so that is right on my website. And so, yeah, all of my handles are at Mixtus Media on social media.
Awesome stuff. And we'll be sure to add in the links that you've provided in the podcast description as well. So they're going to be there for people to use. But it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about book marketing and social media. I feel like there's some really important things to come out of that for authors.
Great.
So thank you so much, Jenn. It's been
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for having me.